idea, and all of Venus's references were always 60 pop, sci-fi, poster girls, all those things.
It's an aesthetic which I've kind of grown up with. I mean, I'm so influenced by what I've read. I've seen the pin-up girls from, the 40s and the 50s. The movie star portrait shots of, Gloria Swanson and Marilyn Monroe and all of the sirens of the screen. Influences by cartoons. I used to be obsessed with the Jetsons and
Mickey Mouse?
Lost in Space. Mickey Mouse. How did you get that? Disney. I mean, in a way, it's all kind of the genre. I mean, Barbarella was a big influence in the 60s when I first saw that movie. This art house theatre I was taken to at uni, and changed my life. Obviously, that's in the work as well. So it's interesting, even the way that cartoons have influenced the work. Obviously, it's got references to gaming, to cartoons, to manga, to Japanese sci-fi, to all of that. It's like I guess it's almost like a living, realistic cartoon in a sense.
Yeah.
So we try to capture that essence.
And I think that was really important to move it from a 60s metaphor and bring it into today and hopefully make it quite timeless because the messages were so important.
Well, 2016 is when we started it. So 2016 marks the era of change for this story and this body of work. When I reference things in my generation, I reference it from the 40s, 50s and the 60s. My nieces and nephews will be referencing this work because they won't have ideas, which they don't have any recollection of 40s, 50s or 60s, unless they Google it. So this will be an inspiring body of work for the new generation to look back to as a reference point, if that makes sense.
And what are you hoping that new generation to take on this body of work?
The messages that they're quite strong messages of empowerment, messages of war, messages of hope, messages of landing on a new frontier, a new planet. Identity.
Yeah.
I mean, this transgenderism is built into the story. It's about what is masculine, what is feminine, what is feminine masculine, and what is masculine feminine. So all these notions of empowerment. I mean, the warrior is a classic example of females can be just as powerful on the battlefields as men, which is obviously what's happening now, but it's taken a shitload of time to get there.
And it's so important for young people to have strong role models that maybe went through a journey and and in creating this, it's like a new world. And I'd love to speak to the photo making because it's not like you came into the studio and you set up and it was a series of photographs. Like this is very much photo making, and you've used this sort of inspiration to create a new world, but using everyday objects around the house. So what was that like?
That was basically that's probably I always see the strength in artists that are problem solvers. So by laying down the law that everything had to be shot on an analog level. I'm obviously shot digitally, but I had to shoot it in no CGI, and so it was like, how do I create these worlds that are believable? So there's a lot of things that come together that, when you look at it, feel very natural, and that was very purposeful in the sense that you need to find things that make sense. For example, so I'm going to start giving away a few magicians' tricks here, seeing you've made the effort to come today.
And a few Easter eggs, please.
So, for example, like a sun. How do you make a sun? How do I make the sun without sticking a camera and actually photographing the sun? Which is very difficult to do.
Take that
So this one,
Reference.
yeah, so that's the two worlds one down at the end. So basically sat down with my team being my assistant, two assistants that I was working with, and we kind of just workshopped it. And we just sort of broke it down to its basics. And when you break the sun down to the basics, what is it? It's a chemical reaction. That's all it is. So it's like, okay, fine. We have to find a chemical reaction. And then we found this fantastic little experiment that's taught in primary school to little kids, introducing them to science. And basically what they do is, it's a fun game with colour. And they get basically a bowl of milk, they get food dye, drop it in, so you get the nice little bits of colour, and then you get the magic ingredient of detergent. When you drop the detergent into the milk and into the food dye, the detergent attacks the fats in the milk, and all the colours and everything just start going berserk and start swimming around each other. And it's like, you do that in front of the camera, bang, shoot it, you've got a sun.
So that's milk?
That's milk and food dye and detergent. A lot of this work is
low fat.
the only then you can enhance it digitally, and all we did was just got the saturation and just cranked it up, which gave it that contrast and that really blown out colours like you'd imagine looking at the sun, you know. So these things they have to be able to work together, which is really, really important. And the other things that are really important is you know, when you're building a surreal world, it's got to seem logical in the same breath. And for example, like one of Venus walking walkies down here, and you can see the fantastic little plastic dinosaurs that Venus had found and painted for the shoot. You notice there's all these pops of colour and art in the background. Now, I thought, okay, if you're Venus and you're the goddess of Venus, like any dictator or any, you know, you would have portraits of yourself. So what I did is we can see from the pop art, which is down the back wall there, which Venus created. So we use Venus's artwork in there, so it kind of belongs, it kind of makes sense, that things live together.
Her world.
Yeah, so we make that world complete. So there's many great little tricks. Like I suppose behind me is a great. This is a classic. Yeah. So basically everything in there is basically a food shoot.
Can I just say one thing?
Yep.
Well, obviously we had a look at. Well, obviously.
I've got to blow my nose. Sorry.
When you want to reference the galaxy in the black vast space, you go to NASA and you find the images there, but it wasn't good enough. So obviously we created it, or Rob will go into how he's created the space that's in the background, which is not from NASA, but actually what we did was far better than the shots from NASA.
Since Rob's blowing his nose, why don't we talk about the hair and makeup side of things?
Ooh,
because
yes,
you always look fantastic, and I can see that around the room there's a huge effort has gone into the hair and makeup production. Should we circle back to that after?
Circle back to
We were just discussing the background.
Oh yeah.
And how NASA images weren't good enough. So
Of course they weren't.
they were a bit low res.
So how did you problem solve that?
So basically, just thought about space and what it is, and it's basically it's a big black vast sphere of nothingness with beautiful highlights of colour. And I think a lot of people, when they start drawing stuff, they just get it white and just start making stars. But then we're sort of like, no, space is totally colourful. So how do I do that? So basically we laid down some big lots of perspex and found colourful things in the kitchen. So we found spices, bicarbonate soda, what can't it do, chalk dust, and then just started sprinkling things and building up the image. And so we basically that's one frame, and then we just started building up bits of areas. started acting bits of colour, and then what kind of gave it life, because when you start dropping down things, it looks very forced. So we just started I just got this big bit of card and just started giving a bit of a draft, and things started to spread because space is made out of explosions, and explosions have direction. So that's when we started bringing the logic into it. So, and then you can actually start seeing flicks of like that.
It's sort of like nebulas. So
yeah.
And they are very colourful in space, so which sort of replicated it with the
Yeah,
spices.
with the spices and those compounds.
Yes.
The moon is always a favourite one of mine, unless you've heard about it, but that's something that most of you have looked down onto. That's the hint, looking down onto and seen in their life. Anyone, if you already know the secret, don't give it up.
The dark moon up there.
The moon. So that's obviously this planet's been done the same way as the sun.
Yeah.
Milk and food done. Does anyone have a guess what the moon might be?
Orion.
Sorry?
Orion is.
Oh, right, you're down the right road. I started thinking like types of coffee, so it's not coffee, it's something you look down. It's a stout beer. So just very, very simple things. So it's just, you're just sort of going through your memory banks of what things look like. Yeah.
And the rocket?
That was made by this wonderful lady.
That's like a rocket. It's alright. Well, we had to be really thrifty and creative about, I can't really go and get a rocket like size. Strategy.
It was funny when
So we had to be a little bit creative.
When Venus is displaying a lot of things to me, like the dinosaurs reception, there's great dinosaurs and I'll be great at walking. I pictured a dinosaur that big. When we were doing it, and then Venus was like, oh, okay, no worries, we can make this work.
Dinosaur?
Yeah, the dinosaurs are sitting over there and down there.
Did you bring it to the
wow.
office?
Are you going to walk it? I know it's a robot.
Well, it did walk. We actually walked it on video. It was fun on set.
Yeah.
We finished. But this is the scale of the dinosaur. That's actually was in the shot.
What a dino.
It's my little babe. So, I mean, this is the scale we're working on. Most of the scale, even the rocket was a lava lamp
Yeah.
from my bedroom. So it's kind of this big and had the water and the bubbles. So I've sprayed it and pimped it up so it would look like a rocket. But a 60s sci-fi rocket. It had to have the aesthetic of that genre as well. So obviously several different shoots to get me a rocket.
So there was a day shooting
Space.
talent. There was a day shooting all the still life, the robots, all the silver glittery bits, the flags, the wigs, all those bits and pieces.
So on one day it was everything that was Venus.
Yeah.
In the colour block
Yeah.
of all the costumes, the hair was all light and cool and pale. Bombshell. And then the day 2 was the dark, the fierce, the red, the obnoxious, the dictator, the fierce warrior on the second day. So
And then the third day, all the still life, and then about
Did you
2
wanna-
weeks of shooting all the other
and
main
then
worlds.
the extras. So did you want to tell everyone how this dinosaur looked like a bit of an organic
Flesh.
fish?
So I just thought I'd try that.
Is that space calling?
That was another thing. Was like, how do I create from a plastic robot to something that's organic and real and look like it belongs, looks like it has a reason to be there, and that was to put flesh into it. You know, I thought of the Borg from Star Trek. You know, these half mechanical, half organic beings, or from Alien or whatever. But so I sort of sat there thinking about it, and I was sitting in front of my fish tank while I was thinking about it. I went, oh, my fish. So I set up lights around the fish tank, got the camera and just kept on photographing them and waiting for them to get into the right positions. And then, so use the fish's scale and that, and then just put those into those things.
I think the fish were cichlids.
Cichlids, yeah, they were probably about this big. Yeah. So so that was important, always to bring something in and try to make it seem alive. You know, it's like particularly down in the Mars Triumphs, the last image. If you notice in the dark area, there's this big storm happening with twisters, or maelstroms, whatever you want to call them. That was basically done with a single vase, water, and a blender. Just putting the blender in the top, getting those maelstroms to start, and it's quite amazing when you do watch them and let them kind of take off. They actually start splitting up and doing very natural.
Well, they actually look like miniature tornadoes.
Yeah.
In
So that's how we created the tornadoes. The red sand is Bunnings, kids sand. You know.
Shout out to our sponsors.
Can you wait 2 minutes? Yeah, Venus. That was part of Venus's entourage of Venus furnishings. The plate behind the
Yes.
the bust, yeah.
A lot of the props were over a year, were collected, resourced, painted, like really well thought about pieces about what. I had to source this little thing, and also the baby. Quite unusual things. I mean, a lot of the jewellery were made by a friend of mine, Patrick Christie, who was a stylist on the shoot. You know, metal studs individually put on a little toy insect that was sprayed chrome. So there are actually a lot of consideration, a lot of detail that's been going into each little piece.
I think that's why the worlds are quite unbelievable, even though they're totally farcical. They're totally believable in the same breath, and it's because of that detail. Thinking, you know, it's like if you're doing a fashion shoot or an advertising campaign, you need everything to work together to make that believable. And the same, I think we've really got to take our hat off to Venus is that the styling in it gives it a total continuity, even down to the colour sense that runs through it.
So even beyond the sort of concept and idea that Venus came to you with, the collaboration was throughout, and you sort of brought your ideas and props and styling to the.
Yeah, it was a great team effort, because, I mean, we couldn't have done it singularly. It has to be a collaboration to get the end result, because there's a lot of consideration, a lot of decisions. Thousands of decisions have been made at every point about what that looks like, or what this will shoot like, or what the lighting will be, or what colour sand we get, you know, things like that. And a lot of the wardrobe, obviously, I've done. Obviously, how that bust.
I'm not drunk.
Must have had a drink before. See, I'm still standing. So even the bustiers were all, actually they were sourced from a sports shop. They were actually lacrosse bust protectors for women getting whacked with a ball. And I basically, it was all up here, covered like a protective plastic thing. So I've actually cut it up to make it work and sprayed it and so on. But how Roberts interpreted that is with the gloss, the shine. Otherwise, it would just look like a piece of black object, matte and no dimension. So the luster is important. A lot of the shines, the feeding nipples on the bust was quite specifically put there, because even though she's a fierce warrior and a bombshell, she's still a mother, she's nurturing. So they're feeding nipples, so they're all quite relevant to the story.
Yeah, I think too. That just came to my mind then. It was that, you know, the whole story is a story of journey, and I think we had to kind of go through a journey ourselves to actually embody that concept. You know, it's not fast food. It's very much a slow cook. You know, faster food.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that gave it another nuance. You know.
And what about the armies of the sameness of everyone else looks the same, and then sort of Venus is this hero who's unique and exceptional. What's the metaphor and idea behind the armies of everyone who's the same?
Perfect example of Stop the War, and also that one there, which is Transition of Venus. So obviously that symbolises a force which is stopping two sides of the army. On one side is the Mars general, who isn't happy, and the other side is the Venus general, with the army behind that. On this side, it's brute strength and force, which has been through the years of, you know, cavemen and brute force and all of that. And on the other side, if you can see, the general is actually pushing a laptop, which is the push-button technology of winning the war. So it's as easy as one button push.
Drones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's holding back, and it's a story of good and evil. It's a story of Mars and Venus. It's a story of brute force versus technology and how you win the war these days. So.
Yeah, and also for me was I very much wanted to, because we're talking about these gods, and everything else is supporting that. So you don't want to. It's kind of like the bride and the bridesmaids. The bridesmaids all look the same, and the bride looks very thing. So it's that concept of not taking away from the main story. And I think that was very much the fact. And the idea of drones, because if I went, there's a kind of a dark side to this one on an aesthetic level. I was looking at, you know, what do armies look like, and I went through the great propaganda images, you know, and because a lot of this is shot heroically, a lot of the very chosen to shoot everything from slightly a lower level, so there's no distortion and it's quite heroic. And all these stances are all very heroic.
Like Stalin.
Yeah. The Nuremberg, you know, this is a big Nuremberg influence from that perfect soldier, you know, and you know those dark messages.
It's like a cloning sort of.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, we had an hour-long conversation about whether they should have belly buttons or not.
Oh.
And you know, and we've totally finished that story off that they'd have to have belly buttons. Concept that the clones don't have belly buttons is moot. It's got to get its food from somewhere, even if that's from a petri dish. So that's how deeply we went into.
That's the level of consideration.
Yeah. On every
decision making on every point.
Yeah.
To make the world seem realistic.
Yeah.
In that sort of.
Yeah. And the idea of transition to a kind, we wanted that order because I think when you get to that time of transition and decision, I think at that I would, when you make a decision in your life, things at that moment seem very ordered. So I really wanted to, and how do I do that in a visually strong sense? So that's why there was all the sameness.
Yeah,
as well.
and Venus for you, was there anything about sort of fighting the mainstream to become Venus?
Well, it's also it's very layered. Obviously, even that symbolises my fight with the two sides once again. There's also a fight with what's ordered, what's expected of you in authority, and who you have to answer to, you know, when you're transitioning. There's all sorts of topics that come up, so you're always fighting something, you're always answering something, you're always kind of defending something, otherwise it's a given, which is the extreme of transgender.
And now you've presented this sort of heroic image and body of work that can inspire other people to feel empowered and proud of who they are or who they want to become and along that journey.
Exactly. Yeah.
So from this series and collaboration, do you think you'll work together again?
Yeah, we've talked about it. In fact, gee, there's pandemics and things that kind of get in the way. But yeah, we constantly talk about new imagery. We're talking a lot about pronouns at the moment. We're kind of a bit obsessed with that, aren't we? Pronouns.
Absolutely.
When I met you the first time and I asked you your pronouns, you said this, that.
And I said Esquire.
Just amongst the audience here, I'm happy to say that I was transgendering and I was wanting to be known as she, her. But now I've recently discovered that I've changed it to non-binary, so I'm neither this nor that. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And pronouns aside, even the official pronouns of non-binary is they, them. And I don't even respect that. They're so dismissive.
Yeah. So they're nice conundrums that we're talking about that could turn into something.
That's right. I have to live with that day by day, but at the end of the day, I'm an artist and that's that. Anything more to know? I don't think so.
Does anyone have any questions for either of the artists?
Yes.
About the pre-visualization process.
Yeah.
Obviously you built it before you shot it, yeah? To what extent did you build it before you shot it?
But built it before I shot it.
Did you storyboard it? Or
Oh yeah, okay, sorry, yes. I was.
Do you want to pass that around?
Do you want to answer that question and sound patronising? It was like, how do I build it to photograph it? Sorry. So. Yes. It was a matter of. Venus gave me these drawings, which everyone should have a look at, and the narrative was very much there. What Venus was doing was very much there, even down to the micromanagement of costuming and a lot of notes on all that.
I think it gave
and then
the cues of where it could go.
Exactly, and
that's where
So then I sort of had to think about this red world and this hot, warm world and this cool world, and that started building up the ideas. Mountains. There are drawings there of Venus planting the flag in the ground. So I knew that to make that stronger, I would have to build something stormy. So there's visual cues. It's like walkies. I would need to build some kind of city to give that footage. So
it's actually a street scene on Venus.
Yeah.
So. Part of the story was even sort of the subject was about the Parisian woman walking her poodles down the Champs-Élysées. So I've taken that and imagined that to be on another world. So that's what that story is about.
Yeah.
Also.
And therefore, it was then again finding things that would make it seem like it was alien but looked very realistic.
But are you sort of sketching it out, or you're just kind of collaboratively sort of photoshopping as you go, kind of thing?
Well, they've been pre-sketched.
Right. Yeah.
So the
extensive pre-sketching.
Just have that book. So let's talk about walkies.
I think with a lot of even like Rob's background of advertising and all of the commercial aspect. You shoot talent first, and then you build everything around the story. The
talent gives you exciting. So Walkies was like that, for example. And then and Venus then followed up with a bunch of references. And then I kind of took that in, and then I thought, okay, but now I need to make it here in Melbourne. How do I do that? Or here from my travels around the world, and how do I find that? So everything was so glossy and silky and perfect. So how do I find a perfect road with beautiful little rings in it? I find that in a $2.50 shower curtain to build. So then that gives me terra firma. That gives me the ground to work out. And then I just wanted to find other silvery surfaces. So basically, shot the side of the Melbourne Museum to get that.
Fair Square as well.
Fair Square? No, that was all the Melbourne Museum. And then the buildings were a construct of the buildings I photographed in Singapore. These great glass domes, and I grabbed that and sort of chopped them up and built these things. So I definitely started getting an idea of the feel of what it was that I had to chase. So I always say that if I can see it in my head, I can do it. And I could very much saw all this very, very quickly in my head. And I think that's my keyhole to the artistic world, is that my imagination, to be able to think clearly and to work that out and see it very quickly. And then I knew I could do it. So I knew then the bits of the jigsaw puzzle. I hope that's answering the...
What I guess I'm curious about is how close to that, as you visualize, for Venus to see before you did it, I guess. You know what I mean?
Oh no, there was a journey to find it. As I said, it was.
Well,
we didn't sit down and draw that wall. You know? Yeah.
We were actually in the process of discovering as well.
Yeah.
We didn't know what Venus was like, and we didn't know what Mars was like. We've never been there.
Yeah.
Obviously not a Nike ticket to there or something like that. But, I mean, to build the world around, well, that was done as a sketch, which is pretty much close to what that's about. But it's about the back, the world.
Yeah. So that's my strength.
That's what the collaboration entailed.
Yeah.
And even the story of the walking the dinosaurs, which is the French lady walking the French poodles. If you break it down further, the mother dinosaur has a baby dinosaur. How is that possible? Well, if you actually think about it, it's technology is pulling us at breakneck speed, and technology is producing technology, and it's not real. So that story is about us being led by the bubble of technology, and technology producing itself at a rapid exponential rate.
I think also answering that question of yours, it just popped into my head, and it was a tool which actually brought the compositions together, is that if you look through it, it sticks out like dog's balls once you see it, but it's very, very hard to see if you don't know it. And that was, for me, the story of Journey is a circle. And we're constantly on this rotation, you know. And I thought, I want to bring that into it. And then Venus actually brought the plate, and it was like, there was a circle. And then I started, so if you actually look at every one of these photographs, there's a circle happening in every single image. So then that gave me a compositional tool. So I knew where to put my horizon, how to use those circles to frame in the portrait, which is a very traditional kind of portrait shape. So I think that's probably the essence of what you're asking there.
Film background, hyper-controlled.
Yeah. So I think when you get those things to be able to work out, then your rectangle works well with something that you can position in it, and everything will fall together. Yeah.
You can see why Earp identifies as a photo maker instead of photographer, because he's definitely sort of constructing as he goes, like more of an artist than a sort of set situation.
Right, thank you. I mean, I think we're all artists and photographers. They're amazing artistic
I feel like it's a very different medium.
Yeah.
The sort of studio and versus analog photography versus photo making, which is a concept that's quite new to me.
Yeah.
And I know you've been asked quite a lot if this is CGI, if it's manipulated, but he's made them out of everyday objects and then constructed this world based on the collaboration.
So not one feature has been sort of taken from a stock image from Google or something like that.
Or NASA.
It was really funny. There was two things in our original conversation. In our original conversation, there was two things. One, Venus came to me and said, I want to do this for my website. And I was looking through it, and I just said to her straight up, if it's just for your website, you won't be able to afford me. And I said, because this is something much, much bigger. What this is an idea that will end up on a gallery wall. And if we work together on that, that's where it'll end up. So it became from basically a briefing to do a job to a collaboration. Like, no, this is such a good idea. This belongs much more than just on a screen on a computer.
Sort of turned out like a commission going into a collaboration.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
The initial what was the other thing? I think there was two things, didn't I? That was jumped down my head. So there was the collaboration and damn it.
It'll come up to you.
It'll pop at just 3 o'clock this morning. Tomorrow.
Probably have time for one or two more questions if anybody.
Anyone else wants to ask anything? Something you're curious about?
Does the book Women Are From Venus and Men Are From Mars have anything got to do with what influenced the name, or?
How did you know that?
I've read the book.
I've read the book too.
Yes.
And that's why I did this. Because that was an old construct done in the 60s. So it was about females being at home, the providers, the homemaker, the Stepford wives, cook, clean, take care of the house, man goes to work, all of that. So obviously that book was preaching to all those generations about how it was meant to be. So I read it and I just thought, you know what, that's just a load of baloney. I love it. It's not what's happening now. So basically, it's actually, in a way, reversed.
The opposite, yeah.
The opposite.
Yeah.
So now it's the society makes way for equality and the female role is more empowered, So I think now it's just the edges are all blurring, so it's getting towards that equality on every point, I think if men can have childbirth, I think we'll be equal. You know what I mean? So, and I think that was an important part of the 60s that I took, because that actually gave birth to my name, that I actually changed by birth, deaths and marriages. I thought, what name can I call myself? I didn't want to be a Joyce or a Trudy. No offense to any Joyce in the audience. Or Trudy, or this or that. I needed something empowering, so I basically chose Venus. My middle name is Virgin, and my last name is Tomarz.
Yeah.
So I just thought, that's my journey. That's what I've signed up for in making the decision to go from one gender or one space to another space. And by the end of the day, gender is here from the neck up, and sexuality is from the waist down. And that's as simple as it gets. I think a lot of people confuse the both together, and they're actually two separate things. So, and I think now it's all coming out with the extra LGBTI and the non-binary, because you could be transgender, you could be a lesbian transgender, you can be whatever, you know what I mean? There's no set, you look like that, you should be doing that. So it levels the playing field for a bit more fluidity.
Great.
And a bit more flexibility. So if you feel, basically you feel, you are, and that's what you are. There's no secret in it. I think it's just people who get caught up in the political trappings and the pronouns and things like that. Just be fabulous, darling. What else do you need to know?
Exactly.
We're a fabulous thing, just get out the front door. Colour the world. And that's as easy as it is. The rest is all white noise, really. And that's obviously what we achieved here, is to create something out of just the conversation and the image on a piece of paper. We took this and made it live and breathe. And we're sitting here talking about it. So our job is done. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you, Venus and Rob. We really enjoyed that. If anyone has any other questions, think
We'll hang around for another
yeah,
little while, and yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much, Tessa Spooner,
Oh, yeah.
the gallery manager, who has made our journey fabulous. We've actually, just to let everyone know, we've actually had several cancellations last year. This was meant to be last year.
Deferred.
We've had a COVID lockdown,
Yeah.
the gallery's been locked down, we've rescheduled and all sorts.
Yeah,
It's
so-
a long journey in the whole
Yeah.
process.
So thanks for coming out and supporting us too, by the way. That's amazing that you get out your heels and have a look at some art.
And one other thing, it is for sale.
And there are books, and if you'd like to buy one, please come over to the front desk.
There are prints available also of the series in the price list over there, or over here. I think it's moved. The books. There are other postcards and things if you want to buy anything of a memento or whatever. There's different price points, so please feel free to do that.
Support the artist.